Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Kentucky for yielding. I rise in strong support of this bipartisan legislation sponsored by my friend and colleague, Mr. Barr from Kentucky. This legislation sends a clear message to the rest of the world. You can either do business with the United States and the free world, or you can do business with the brutal dictatorship of Kim Jong-un and the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. You cannot deal with both. Mr. Speaker, the gravest threat facing our nation today is North Korea, the world's worst perpetrator of human rights. Kim's contempt for human life animates both his human rights record and his nuclear ambitions. Just this past June, we learned how Kim's regime tortured University of Virginia student Otto Warmbier. His parents, Cindy and Fred, went public with the details of their son's suffering in September during an interview with CNN. These are just a few of the details that Fred and Cindy shared in that interview. Halfway up the stairs, we hear this loud, guttural howling, inhuman sound. They found him strapped to a stretcher. He has a shaved head. His eyes are darting around. He's blind. He's deaf. He's on a feeding tube. His bottom teeth looked like they had been taken with a pair of pliers and rearranged. His mother, Cindy, described how his hands and legs were totally deformed. Otto's story serves as a very real and very tangible reminder and teaches a new generation of Americans of what happens under totalitarian governments and communist dictators. Now, as the brutal Kim regime continues its nuclear quest, the same barbarism that killed Otto threatens all Americans. This July, the dictatorship claimed it had the capacity to send an intercontinental ballistic missile anywhere in the world. In September, they conducted their 6th nuclear weapons test and claimed to have detonated a hydrogen bomb that could be mounted on an intercontinental ballistic missile. These actions must not be ignored. This legislation adds secondary sanctions to those passed in May. It not only prevents persons from trading with, facilitating trade with, investing in, or participating in a joint venture with a North Korean entity, but also targets foreign financial institutions from aiding in such actions. Simply put, this bill forces banks to cut off all participation with North Korea-related business interests, freezing out the capital that funds North Korea. Mr. Speaker, 56 years ago, at the height of the Cold War, when another godless communist regime threatened the world, President Kennedy reminded us of America's exceptional nature and consequent leadership in the world. His inaugural address included this reflection. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, not just for Otto and his family, but for all those who might be harmed by North Korea if we do not act now. I again thank the gentleman from Kentucky for his leadership on this vital issue, and I yield back.